the last of the real water cooler talk shows on YouTube. Texas gets a nice, much-needed win against Arkansas this past weekend. Arch Manning goes supernova and scores 6 touchdowns, receiving, rushing, and passing. And that offense that we were waiting for has finally woken up a little bit. So we're excited about that. Defense still has some issues, but we're going to dive into that. And then, of course, it's rivalry week. It's Texas A&M. Little bro's coming to town, so we got to spank him and teach him a lesson, just like old times. And yeah, so we're going to dive into it. A lot of good stuff going on around the country, and we're excited to watch it all unfold. But before we dive into it, please give us a like, a comment. Please subscribe. Help us grow, man. Help us out. We really appreciate it in advance. But I'll pass it to you, Kyle. So, what was your thoughts, man? You know, Texas got in a shootout with Arkansas, but made the plays when he needed to. Defense still has some things to work out. But what were your overall thoughts on that game?
Well, man, I'm 6 beers deep by halftime because that was just abysmal. Number one, I think the big thing we need to address is, Joel Klatt said it best this week on his show. What happened to this Texas defense that was so, amazing? The past 4 games, we've given up 30 plus points. Mostly, I would say it's around the secondary. And the fact that also our defensive line, even though they look great, they're stopping the run. They're just not getting the pressure that we've seen in previous games. Granted, it's against Georgia, Vandy and all these other teams, but still, it's been a little bit lackluster, whether it's been from injury or complacency or something. But this needs to get addressed quickly because, again, like we said, it's rivalry. It's A&M. We're going to get their best game, but we need to get our defense back on right. Um, Offensively, you said it best. This is the offense we've been looking for since week one. This was what we were hoping to see at Ohio State. This is what we were hoping to see through the entire season. Now, granted, Arch has gotten better. Having his career day of almost 400 plus yards of passing. 4 touchdowns, run. Passing. He ran one in. He caught one. This is the Arch Manning that we've been looking to see for a very long time, and we're finally getting it. He's getting hot at the right time, but unfortunately, at the same time, it might be a little bit too late. Granted, we got a little help this past week in the CFP picture, but we need a little bit more things to happen. We need Oklahoma to lose to LSU. We need potentially Auburn to lose to or Alabama to lose to Auburn. Again, this is rivalry. There's a lot of teams that share the same name, and I'm trying to discriminate. But we need a lot of things to happen. There's a few things also in the ACC, the Big 12, and even the G5s that could happen that could help us out here. Notre Dame has to go play somewhere that if they lose, that could open up a spot for us. There's a lot of things that happen. But right now, this Texas offense is looking pretty good, but now the defense is regressing. We need to still have a complete game, which we haven't had as a team. But if we can get that going, I could see this Texas team now being really good in the postseason, whether it's the CFP or a bowl game, because finally this offense has picked it up and is, getting it going. Granted, the running game is also still pretty abysmal, but at least we're putting up 50 something points. That's crazy. It's the best points that we put up this whole season. So not too many complaints, but I definitely know and I think you can also say we can still get better and we got to just build some consistency still, which has been a main issue this whole season.
Yeah, big time. I'm going to start off with the good regarding just Texas in general after that Arkansas game. Arch Manning, man, he's getting better week in, week out, and you just see the confidence growing, the poise. He's very calm in that pocket. He was baptized by fire earlier in the year when the lack of offensive line really just forced him to learn how to be uncomfortable, every time he dropped back, especially in the swamp and some of those games early on. So Arch has grown up a lot. The game slowed down for him, and he's hitting the open guys. The receivers are building rapport with him now. Finally, you see Emmett Mosley coming on. Livingston had a bounce back game. Wingo had no drops and was a plus player for us, which is huge. He made a couple tough catches too. So shout out Ryan Wingo and then DeAndre Moore. This is what we expected out of DeAndre Moore. He's a guy that was one of our better receivers last year, put up good numbers and was timely and clutch last year for that great offense with those good receivers. He hasn't really done much this year, just based on, one thing or the other being off. But he finally had a breakout game, and he's a guy that I think can take over games for you down the stretch. If you are to, win this one and somehow get into the CFP, he's going to be a factor there. And hopefully he'll be back next year too. I think he will, but you never know. He could go pro. But offense looks good. Offensive line is a lot better than it was. Still, the run blocking, the run blocking wasn't horrible after rewatching the game, but our running backs are just not it, man. I mean, Trey Wisner, he runs hard, he's shifty, he puts his heart out there, but he's physically limited. He's a small guy, and he's not the fastest guy either. So, and then CJ Baxter looks like he's 55 years old out there, man, coming off that injury. So I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with our running backs, man. It's just, we're so used to being spoiled with, Jonathan Brooks, Bijan Robinson, Roshan Johnson, Jaden Blue, even, and the performance we're getting from there. We had guys that would make bad offensive lines look good just by just making two or three guys miss every time and getting upfield. We don't have that this year. Wisner can do that every once in a while, but we're definitely missing that plus playmaker at running back. But overall, the offense looks good. Defense, man, the defense, it's really weird how they've just kind of fallen off a cliff. I will give them credit; they stepped up in the second half, but coverage on the back end wasn't as bad as I thought upon rewatch. But the too much soft stuff over the middle, linebackers were bad in coverage. Not having Ant Hill hurts, of course. Losing Trey Anthony Smith hurts. But you got to patch it up because A&M can pass, and they got some weapons on the outside. So, lot to clean up this week.
Absolutely, man. Losing Hill Jr. is it was a little bit of a gut punch because as you saw, even this running back Washington was just kind of gashing us in the first half. So that's what I'm saying. We have to make sure that our defensive line and our front seven are being stout this game. I think getting pressure to A&M, providing that pass rush, trying to get off their timing, what I've always said this whole time. If we can provide pressure to the quarterback, we're going to disrupt the timing, we're going to disrupt the passing game, and hopefully that helps out our DBs, which is honestly something that I think me and you could both gripe about that we haven't gotten that pressure we wanted to. Yes, Colin Simmons is having a great year all around. He's probably going to be building his draft stock for next year to be leaving as a junior. But it's only been him. You've only been hearing his name. You haven't heard much of Hero. You haven't even heard much of our linebackers or anyone. It's been a real tough thing. It's been really the Colin Simmons show on the defensive front. So you really want to get that going. Shout out though to LaFau for getting that awesome interception, fumble, scoop and score, our first defensive score of the season. But again, it's still all you hear the announcer saying is Simmons' name. Simmons, Simmons, Simmons. He's doing great. He's doing this. He's getting all these sacks. He's doing all this. What made our defense so effective these past couple years, it wasn't just one guy. It was multiple dudes. We started with Byron and Sweat, and then we went to then next season it was everyone. It wasn't just two guys. It was the entire defense was going and getting dudes. Granted, we've had Burke give us some solid times here and there, but we haven't seen him provide pressure. He's making these great open field lateral tackles for losses or just stuffing at the line of scrimmage, but we haven't seen him actually get into the backfield too much. So that's something I really kind of hope that we see Burke do this week. Last year, we did see Burke, make the big goal line stop. It was his tackle that, stopped the whole thing cold and basically killed every bit of momentum and the Aggies had going into that fourth quarter after the Quinn interceptions. But so far, he's been pretty quiet. He's had a couple breakout games. He's had a couple good tackles, but I haven't really seen him do much. And I know this guy really wants to go to the next level. So this would be a great game for him to buff his stats, get his name back out there, and of course solidify himself as a Longhorn legend. But I know before we get into the A&M, I know we're gonna have a lot of haters. It's a little brother. They're always gonna say their stuff, but I got to give a little shout out to some of our Georgia haters. We got our first ones here, so 36 DJ Sanders and Rob Henson 3489. Yes, I know we're not probably scouting the opponents the best. We get it, but here's what I'm going to tell you: A&M has not played anyone of any sustenance, this whole season. So, granted, this is a limited scouting report because, again, we're doing a lot of traveling and just enjoying life and stressed out and riding the emotional roller coaster. But this is the one thing I will say about A&M. Yes, granted, A&M is 11-0. They're probably going to make the playoffs. They're contending for a SEC title game for the first time competing to get to that game. But let's talk about this. I think Texas is going to win this game. I think Texas has a better chance of, showing what A&M really is. This is the A&M Aggies. This is their show me game. This is their prove it game. Because so far this whole season, let me just tell you, they've played Missouri, dog water. They played LSU, fired their coach post Brian Kelly firing. Florida post Bobby firing. Kentucky is Kentucky. I'm just gonna throw that out because I hate the Stoops. Hail State, even though Kentucky and Hail State have given us some games, they're not good. Auburn with Hugh Freeze and Jackson Arnold, that's a train wreck and a half. South Carolina, God love Cocktober, but they didn't do anything this year. And then at the same time, I know Arkansas gave us a little bit of a hesitation and some good stuff here this last time. But I'll tell you this right now: these are the back half of the SEC. They haven't really played anyone, so we got to. So this is their big game. This is like what we said earlier. This is their sexy win. If this does this for them, this actually can show that that A&M is a complete team, that they are a contender. But other than that, we need to have. They need this win more than we do. But at the same time, we need this to keep alive. So we will be their first true test while we've taken on Vanderbilt, A&M, Florida, Georgia. These guys are in the top half, top echelon, and top tier of the SEC. We're going to show that new type of ball, and at the same time, I think this defense, even though I just ripped on them, this is probably one of the best defenses they're going to see in a long time. And at the same time, having a hot Arch Manning and a hot Texas offense, this is a potentially good situation where we can get into a one that I sense it actually that this is going to be a gunfight. I think I would bet the over, not guaranteeing it. I'm just saying, bet the over. I wouldn't say Texas covers because it's going to be close. But this is going to be one of those games where you can actually, A&M can hang their hat on the Notre Dame win, which is nice. But Notre Dame's doing what they're doing now. But we really, I would say when it comes to SEC competition, this will be the biggest scoring game I think of out of every SEC matchup this year. This one has the makings of potentially hitting that hundred digit number. Granted, if that happens, I'm going to cuss out our defense at the end of the day. But at the same time, I actually put a lot of trust now and faith in this offense to keep up with those A&M scores.
Yeah, man, I agree, man. I think our offense can get to their defense. I think their defense is kind of the weak link, and I'm like you. I'm very confident. I expect to beat A&M every time we play them, and I think they're not tested quite like we are. I think that's a great point, Kyle. I mean, we went to Ohio State, we went to Athens, we played OU on a neutral site, we played Vanderbilt, we've played a lot of good teams, and we had the crazy schedule of one home game in 62 days, like. Oh, all during SEC play, like we've fought some wars. Arches fought wars, and they fought their wars too. They beat Notre Dame, but like I always say, Notre Dame always sucks to start the year off. They lost to Miami, then they lost to whoever A&M, and they barely beat Purdue. And last year they lost to like Northern Illinois, and then Marshall the year before, earlier in the year. Every year they suck to start the year off, and they get better. They had a true freshman quarterback out there, or redshirt, whatever he is, and they didn't even want to run the ball and they still should have lost that. Whatever, but that's their best win, and I think that we're a lot more battle tested than them, and they're coming to DKR. Arch is on a heater, man. Arch is that guy right now. Marcel Reed, I think he's improved, but I also think that he still has those moments where it's like, dude, you suck. Like, what are you doing, man? Then he'll make up for it and make a great throw, and then have a nice scramble. He's a good quarterback, but he has those WTF moments, and I think that our defense took advantage of that last year. And a lot of those same cats are still out there on our defense, man. I know recently it's looked bad, and it has been bad, but Arkansas's got like a top 10 offense, top four rushing offense, and they have a dynamic quarterback. And, we held them to 23 pretty much until the garbage time touchdowns. It's not going to always be pretty. I mean, A&M gave up like 40 something to Arkansas. And then Georgia, it was 14-10 going into the fourth quarter, and then it went out of control off the onside. So it's not like we were just letting them just run free the whole. We had those breakdowns and coverage that you remember, but and then of course the Vanderbilt game also. It's just like we gave up at the end, but we were like it was like 31-16 with 3 minutes left. So I think we're overinflating how bad this defense is. I think that they're going to play their best game they have in recent weeks on Friday. I think getting Ant Hill Jr. back will really help, and I think Michael Taft finally came into his own in the second half against the Arkansas game, and we kind of moved some things around by putting LaFau at middle linebacker and Trey Moore more on the edge. That really seemed to help us in the run game, and just our defense looked way more in control. Cade Phillips is coming on as our, one of our starting corners, the five-star freshman. He's big and physical. He's a guy that could bully these little receivers that they have. Granted, they could run by him and go score. Like they're lethal. But I think that our defense has enough chops. I mean, let's look around. Ethan Burke, Trey Moore, Michael Taff. All these guys made huge impact plays. Jelani McDonald last year, Jalen Gilbo had some good tackles. Colin Simmons, of course. So a lot of these same guys are there, and these are guys that locked down Marcel. Kind of dominated that O line. Although the O line of theirs got a lot better this year. But like you said, Kyle, they haven't played anyone with a pulse really besides Notre Dame in week two, who sucked in week two. So I think this lines up for a Texas win. Um, you know, if we lose, it's their best team I've ever seen, their best team of their entire lives. We'll give it to them. Congrats to Texas A&M if they do win. But I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good, and I look at our team, man, and we're kind of in desperation mode since we're pretty much out of the playoff, unless we get a couple favors here and there. But I believe if we win this game, man, you get three top 10 wins, three potential playoff teams that you've beaten, and then two of your three losses would be on the road at playoff teams in Athens, in Columbus. Like, what do you expect? Like, do you expect us just to sweep all the playoff teams? Like, that's ridiculous. Meanwhile, these ACC teams and these other teams playing a bunch of schools of the poor, week in week out. Ohio State's load managing in week 11 because they don't have to play anyone until Michigan, so they're resting all their stars in conference. It's just like we're living in different worlds with the schedule this year. So I hope that Texas wins, and I hope that the committee sits down and has that conversation because Texas scheduled Ohio State, and we went there, and some of these other teams, scheduled Syracuse or whatever, and it's going to bite us. It looks like so. But we got to win the game first. Give A&M credit; they've had a great year. They're much improvement in Mike Elko, but I think we got something for him Friday.
I want to make 2 points on this real quick. Number one, I know we've been hanging our hat on this Ohio State loss for a while, even though it's number one, even though they're number one. I got to put the Michigan hat on right now because it is the day of the game. I'm going for Michigan to beat Ohio State, but I'm going to make a comparison here right now. Ohio State, unfortunately. Ohio State and Texas A&M are very similar in the case of that they have both not just played anyone. Ohio State has a very underwhelming Big Ten schedule. Texas A&M is now having an underwhelming SEC schedule. Granted, they had some big wins in the non-con games, but at the same time, these are just not battle-tested teams. With that still being said, this is a chance for them to, really, we're going to call it. This is the A&M team of destiny. This is their best team. This is their wet dream, and they're having a great time, loving life. But this is where you got to have the pride of protecting the house and just make sure you win all your games at home, win every SEC game, and of course beat both your rivals. I think Texas, when you see Texas and Michigan going up against their two arch rivals, I'm not going to say A&M's our arch rival. It's Oklahoma. I'm just going to give them little brother vibes here. It's one of those games where both players on both teams have this sense of if we do what we do, we just execute our game plan, we have a good week of practice, we're gonna be successful, and we just need to have a chance going into the second half, and especially in the fourth quarter, whether it be a one-score game or a field goal, or even we're in the lead. If that's the case, let's just say this: if we're going into halftime and it's a one-score game, maybe Texas is down by a touchdown going into halftime. Michigan's going down by a touchdown going into halftime against Ohio State. I'm actually going to say double down on your bets and bet Michigan, Texas money line to win the game. If we're going into the fourth quarter and we're actually only down by three or a score, we're winning that game as well. I just don't think that these teams are built to go fourth quarter because they haven't played anyone. But number two, I really want to go into this. Dan Lanning talked about, we didn't play Chattanooga State, University. We played USC last week. Same thing is what I wanted to talk about this year. A&M has really truly, you know, adapted that SEC mindset of kind of having those Easter egg cream puffs throughout their season. And yes, you brought it up earlier. Texas had this massive, number one versus number two game at the very beginning. Then you backloaded all your three non-con, I'm just going to say BS games back to back to back, which is also your three of your home games. You go through the entire month of October without being at home at DKR. You get one time at Vanderbilt, and then they talked about it during the Arkansas game. Out of the 63 plus days, this is only the second day that Texas has been at home in DKR. A&M has kind of figured. I'll give A&M credit where credit is due. They kind of figured out that we need to adapt this SEC mindset when it comes to constructing our schedule. Because look what it does for them. giving these in between games. Like I would have loved to have played Sam Houston last week. Anyone who says I don't want to play a cream puff in week 11 or week 12 is, honestly, they're smoking something that I want to on a Saturday night after we lose to Georgia. You want to have these because it's an extra buy that's put into your schedule almost. I think we would have loved to have played, even though, granted the record at the time wasn't, the score wasn't what we wanted, but I would have loved to have played Sam Houston State after, that Ole Miss and Kentucky road battle OT. I would have loved to have maybe have played, instead of having another tune-up game between Vanderbilt and Georgia, instead of that bye, I would have probably loved to have Sam Houston. This really comes down to the question of, can we restructure our schedule these next couple of years? Because I think, yes, next year, like we said, 2026 is the year, but I don't want to have to go through another October next year where we're on the road for four ranked opponents. Oklahoma and Red River. Then we got to go to Tennessee. We got to go back and avenge. There's also LSU is somewhere in there. There's Ole Miss somewhere in there as well. I don't want to have to do that. I think that's one of the things that structure really, now we're seeing the transparency of the actual schedule structure is coming into real effect right now in this back half, especially for the committee when it comes to picking just who's going to go to the CFP. Granted, you just want, right now the name of the game is just win baby win, but still, what's helping people win is that you're having these games to rest, or you're sitting guys out, maybe you don't need them, you're getting them back fully 100% healthy. Or granted, you're just trying to relieve that emotional stress because, like I said, 48 days on the road, not playing a single home game in October, that is brutal for any football player on any level. So really, I think after the end of this, granted, we're going to kill A&M. I'm just going to say it. We're going to kill these sons of guns and we're going to win. But really, Del Conte, Sark, and all these guys, we got to sit down at the end of the season. Granted, if we make it to the CFP, we're going to be dealing with that, and probably nothing's going to change. But if we don't make it to the CFP and go to a bowl game, I think some serious conversations to happen with our administration, our AD, our president, and we need to really talk about restructuring our schedules for the upcoming years and really adapting that SEC mindset of, let's not just throw every non-con at the very back half of the schedule, but let's spread them out throughout the entire thing. Number one, I think that's going to help us just as a program in the long run. I know it's something we probably don't want to do because it's of our pride, but we have to be logistical and logical now moving forward with college football because, again, college football is about money, transfer portal. We can buy a team and win immediately. The game is not like it was back in 2010. Structuring your schedule now is just as important as getting your players out of high school and the transfer portal, as well as getting your staff in order. So there's a lot of questions that can come out of this game. Granted, if we win, when we win against A&M, people are going to take this thought of mine and throw it to the back burner and probably not even think about it. But I really want to make sure that people, our fans, the random listeners, even the haters, because I think even those guys, those Georgia Bulldogs who were throwing the hate comments on us 2 weeks ago, I think they could even agree. Yeah, they probably love playing Fordham and Stanford, last week before they go play for Georgia Tech. I think they would. I think they like playing some of these, Southern, Northwestern, Eastern State Community College Tech schools and stuff like that before they go play like an Alabama or an Ole Miss, because it just gives them a chance to, number one, pad their schedule with an extra win, but number two, just start resting guys and maybe even throw in a couple extra film sessions of, hey, I know we got this team right now, but here's next week, and that's what we're really looking towards and stuff like that. Granted, it exposes you to potentially getting some really horrible upsets, which we have seen in the past, but still, those are far and few between to where I think it's worth the risk going forward, especially now with Texas kind of seeing what's going on. They've already learned that they need to not use the transfer portal as a complement of the cherry and the sprinkles, like I talked about last episode. Now we got to add that second layer of doing this to help give our team the best options. Granted, because we already have the best athletes and the best coach, but now we need to have the best environment going forward to make sure that we win and compete for a CFP year in and year out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's going to change a lot, Kyle, because we're going to 9-game SEC schedules next year. So I'm not sure if everyone's going to stop at those late season, games against Mercer East University or what. But I agree. We need to be more strategic. I mean, we're seeing it now. We scheduled Ohio State and had three cream puffs in a row. Like just horrible, horrible scheduling dynamics there. Meanwhile, other teams were way more smart and proactive and just guaranteed 4 wins plus the nice spacing in between the schedule. So I agree. I agree. Now we're in this pickle now where we have to win, and even if we win against A&M, we're probably out. So yeah, I totally agree. But let's shift to the game now. Well, I think we both feel pretty confident, but what gives you concern? Like, what about our team or A&M? Are you looking at like, man, this could be bad if we don't do anything to address it? I think A&M's got really good receivers. I think the quarterback's pretty solid. Offensive line's mature and veteran, but we kind of got to them last year. So what do you see, Kyle? What do you see happening out there?
Number one, I think we got to establish the run game pretty quickly. I know it's this is I know that is asking, to find a cure to cancer at this point right now, because it is just not. We haven't had a decent run game this whole year. This is going to be the first time Sarkisian has not had 1,000-yard rusher. That stat came out earlier today. Really, we have to find some way to build some, provide that dual threat opportunity, and not just having Arch pull the ball and run out the back door. That's not going to work. You need to have something to where our offensive line can start leaning on these guys. Now, granted, this offensive line, I think, like we said, I know I said it before Georgia and I said it before Vanderbilt. I think we finally found the combo. Now we finally start hearing some of the analysts and the experts say that this is the combination for the offensive line. So this offensive line needs to really just bear down, let your nuts hang and just go run the dang ball. We got to make sure we get some form of run game. And I don't want to see Stark what we've seen in Georgia kind of, like you said in the past, has kind of walked away from the run early because he's not getting maybe those explosive or 10-yard plus carries. You kind of have to be a little bit like Michigan. 4 or 5 yards a carry ain't bad. We got to just grind them out because that's going to help us control the clock. I see these A&M receiving core a lot like Hail State. It's a lot of vertical speed, but granted they've had some of those awesome catches where you see them do the bends and the post and all that stuff. But really, at the end of the day, the majority of when they're just running their standard offense, it's deadline speed, straight ahead, burn you five. My speed is going to get me 5 yards of separation. I'm going to hit the stop, hit the brakes, catch the ball, and then turn around and start running again. Yes, I think our DBs are used to that. We've seen that with Mississippi State. This guy is a dual threat quarterback, and I'm going to bring it back to what I said back with Diego Pavia back when we played Vanderbilt. This defense has now seen every version of a dual threat running back, dual threat quarterback, as well as a quarterback, as well as quarterbacks who just sat back and thrown the dink and dunk routes with Kentucky and Mississippi State. We've seen every bit now of every attack from a standard SEC team. Now, granted, this is going to be the most talented SEC team outside of Georgia that we were going to see and Oklahoma that we're going to see this year. Because I'll tell you this right now, hot take: A&M plays Vanderbilt, A&M wins. This will be I don't think they beat Georgia and I don't think they beat Oklahoma, but this will probably be one of the third best, most talented wide receiving cores we've seen this year. And so if it's going to be a lot of deadline speed, this shouldn't really affect our coverages too much. So I really want to see our DBs kind of come back and our secondary really, nut up here and fix what they've been lacking these past 4 weeks. If our DBs can hold forward against these deadline speed receivers and we can establish a run game, I don't think this is even a contest. I think we go in there, pull it out, stick it in, no spit, no lube, and we have a good time with it. And we win by, we cover 21 points. But it requires us to have a good game. You have to stay fundamentally sound, and you have to you have to respect this front seven of A&M. Granted, they've gotten pressure on some people. And so this will be a solid test. This isn't a Georgia, but this will be a good test for them and showing that maturity, number one, showing the evolution and the getting better week over week. And at the same time, can we finally just see some nastiness out of these guys? I still haven't seen nastiness. That, snarl, foaming at the mouth, put the head into the car crash of the dude's chest and, put him to the ground. I haven't even think I've seen a pancake block once this year on this Texas offensive line. And that's something you kind of want to see here in A&M because number one, you're supposed to hate these guys. You're not supposed to like them. You're supposed to put them in the dirt. We were supposed to do that against Oklahoma, and I didn't see that one time in Red River. So I'd like to see some of them pancake blocks today. Or I mean, on Thursday and Thanksgiving. Because if we can start doing that and have that aggressiveness, then we don't need to worry too much about our receivers and stuff like that. We can just run the ball on them because honestly, any team that has effectively run the ball on A&M has given them a run for their money. Granted, these teams are either focused on running the ball and maybe throw once or twice, and that's why they lose because they're one dimensional. If we can really put that two-dimensional front on them, I think we put their defense in a total blender. And then finally, our defense just needs to get pressure. Last year, what made a lot of sense and what helped us out a ton was our defensive line was getting pressure with just three guys. Granted, we brought an extra guy here and there just to really speed them up and get those explosive sacks. But we really need to have that toughness and not just have Simmons getting sacks. I want to see Hero. I want to see LaFau. I want to see Hill Jr. I want to see multiple guys with multiple sacks, with multiple tackles for loss and multiple pressures. If our front seven can dominate their offense, it doesn't matter how fast the receivers are. If we're throwing them inaccurate, like we saw what happened with Vanderbilt when Javi is throwing it on the rush, it's not accurate. These guys aren't running to go get balls. They're just running to a spot, turning around and hoping it's coming to them. So that's the type of, if we can do these things, I believe Texas can win, and it could be a bloodbath, and it could really expose A&M, which might even drop them further, which helps us out.
Yeah, no, I can see it. I can see it, man. I think it's a Trey Wisner game. I like how you said, let's get physical. Let's see the next level of dog physicality that we haven't really seen out of this team because we've seen it in years past with some of these same guys, but we haven't put together that just bully game. We bullied them last year. We mauled them at the point of attack, specifically offensive line and the defense. I mean, they couldn't do anything against our defense last year. A lot of those same guys are there. So I want us to walk into that stadium with the same mentality. Like, we're not going to let Texas agriculture and mechanical come into the University of Texas's house and get this win. We're gonna go out here and just do what we do and take care of business. But yeah, I think Trey Wisner, man, I'm looking at him because he's like batting 1,000 in rivalry games, man. He always seems to show up. Last year, he was just bouncing off people, just getting upfield against A&M, MVP of that game. Against OU this year, he was clutch, probably the MVP of that game as well. And then against OU last year, he was clutch, had two big breakaway touchdowns for us. So I'm looking at Trey Wisner. We need a legacy game from him. And if you get the running game going, Arch is going to just, have a field day going deep on that secondary of theirs. I know they're pretty good secondary. They're handsy. They'll mug you. I hope Sark's on the refs the whole game, begging for penalties because they interfere on every pass. They do. And that's good coaching. I would coach my players to do that too. Make the ref throw the flag. So Sark needs to make the ref throw the flag. But yeah, Arch, if we have a run game, Arch is going to light it up. I mean, Arch might light it up by himself anyways, based on how he's looked. I know it's Arkansas that we just tore up, but he's been doing that against Vanderbilt. He's been doing it against Georgia. He was about to do it, but we had those drops and got out of rhythm. But he was dialed in to start that game off. And yeah, I think Arch can definitely take over this game. I'm pretty confident, man. I'm going to pick Texas to win. I think we need this game, and I think that we have that. It's just a classic Big Brother situation. A&M's had a great year. They could still go into the playoff and make some noise there. I don't think they're a natty contender necessarily, but I think that they could win a game in the playoff. But this is their veteran team that Elko's built, and credit to Elko. But it's just kind of written in the stars. I believe in this Texas team, man. It's been a crazy year. It's been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of adversity, a lot of growth from the young guys. And I think being at home, I think we put a show on Friday night. It might be scary, A&M might come out hot, and they're good in the second half. They've come back a lot of times this year, but I expect Texas to win. Give me Texas. Let's go 37, A&M 30. Book it.
I'll tell you this, big brother, little brother. I'm a big brother. I have a little brother. What Texas got to do is you got to pin them down. You got to drink yourself a nice sugary Coke, and then you hawk the little loogie, but you have it slowly drip, and it touches their head, and you suck it back up. You know what I'm saying? Now, a couple times I messed that up and just hawked a loogie in my brother's face while he's pinned down. He's young, but I'm sorry about that. I apologize, Max. But that's what Texans got to do. You got to pin them down, and you just got to keep laying it on them at this point. I think Texas. I need to word this correctly. Texas has not put a full four quarters together. I unfortunately believe Texas is not going to do the same. I would not be surprised if the first quarter looks scary, like you said. A&M jumps up on us, maybe two scores, 14 nothing, 14-7, and then we're fighting our way back. It's kind of it's like what we saw with Arkansas. It's they hit us in the mouth and we woke up. I kind of have that feeling that this is what's going to happen with Texas. I think if Texas is to win, though, it needs to be an early fumble and then we recover it back into play three great quarters of the second, third, and fourth. If I was to put anyone, and I have ripped this dude a new one, heavily criticized. I've talked to you on the phone in our group chat, countless others, and I've said the same thing. Wingo, I think, put money on it. I think he has his breakout game. If he does good, we're gonna win this one. Granted, he's had some good games here and there. I think he has a more situation, multiple touchdowns, multiple yards, and so on. So I think we win. I think it's gonna be a lot more high scoring. I'm gonna say 49-42 Texas, but you have to have Wingo go off.
So there you have it. We're both picking Texas. You didn't really think that we would come on here and choose Texas A&M to beat us, right? Texas wins and
Crazy.
continues the streak. So yeah, but assuming Texas wins and hopefully we win, we need some help, it looks like, in the CFP. And I'm looking around the schedule this weekend and rivalry weekend. There's a lot of potential chaos. I'm looking at Auburn, Alabama. That's in Jordan Hare at night. That could be a losable game for sure. OU, LSU. LSU really down bad this year, but that's one I want to see. I would love to see OU just choke and fall out of it, and then we take their spot. And there's other ones too. I'll pass it back to you, Kyle. What are you looking for? I know you're cheering for Michigan this week, although Michigan beating Ohio State hurts Texas and the CFP. But I know you have dual allegiances, so I won't hate you cheering for them. But personally, I want Ohio State to win that game just to save a spot for us.
I definitely understand that. When it comes to just easy sense of getting Texas in, that does help us. That does help them if those nutheads do pull it off. But I'm just telling you now, Michigan's going to do it because
Yeah.
they said it best. There's not a single guy in Ohio State's program that has beaten Michigan, but everyone in Michigan's program has beaten Ohio State. So that's really one of those big things. Plus, it's Michigan at home. I already talked about how Ohio State is fraudulent. They have a underwhelming Big Ten schedule that they haven't really been tested too crazily. You're going to say Washington, okay, Washington who's like barely above 500, and a couple Purdue and a couple of those dudes, you're like, whatever. But I really want to I actually want to touch base on Oklahoma LSU because this is a game that I would say this basically, even if Georgia beats Georgia Tech and Auburn beats Alabama, or I mean, Alabama beats Auburn, my apologies, just Oklahoma losing to LSU, I think just makes room for us. You also want to clear out Vanderbilt too, so you need Tennessee to beat Vanderbilt, but I really want to focus on LSU Oklahoma. I heard this analogy and I thought this was spot on to describe Oklahoma. Oklahoma has an amazing defense. I'm going to give Brent Venables this thing. Granted, we took that defense to, a nice seafood dinner and never called her again in the Cotton Bowl, but they play a dang good defense. Offense is subpar if Mateer isn't on point. So Oklahoma is a glorified Iowa. And what do you get with Iowa football? Great defense, low scoring offense, but just enough to win. And we saw that on full display last week when Oklahoma played Missouri. 17-9, like what is, or 17, whatever. What is that? Two offensive touchdowns. One of them because the defense got it on, forced a punt from Missouri inside their own end zone. So it was a 35. So the offense got the ball on Missouri's 35. Like, what is that? Okay, fine. Anyone should score when you get the ball on your opponent's 35. And then one explosive play for 83 yards. Okay, that's Iowa to a T. So when you're looking at, even though it's at home in Norman, Oklahoma versus LSU, you kind of have a little thing that LSU wants to have a little pride here because I'll tell you now, a little bit in the back half of the episode, I think LSU's playing to impress a certain individual to come to their program, and I think right now they're in the hot seat or in the front runner of getting that person. I think we all know his name starts with rhymes with Bane Biffin, but I think this is a big pride game for LSU. They want to be able to go to a bowl. They want to be respectable. They want to end on a 8-4 rather than a 7-5. If Oklahoma gives us another glorified Iowa performance, I wouldn't be surprised if LSU can finally, with just that talent, do something, and potentially sneak out a win in Norman. And that alone clears up, I think, enough room. If Vanderbilt loses to Tennessee and Oklahoma loses to LSU, I think that gets us just enough room to sneak in there and just, switch spots with Oklahoma again.
Yeah.
Um, Another big one though I want to talk about though is Notre Dame Stanford. Granted, I don't have much hope in Stanford, but the fact Stanford's at home, and we've seen that statistic of East Coast teams going to West Coast have not been doing pretty well. I'm kind of hoping Notre Dame, just finally runs out of magic and loses. That alone, too, also Notre Dame losing to Stanford would be a big win, big spot to allow us to get some more room in there. But other than that, man, I'm just telling you this: Ohio State's fraudulent. I'm ready to beat them. And I can't wait to, when we storm the field after beating them for the fifth time in a row, going up to Ryan Day and ripping his little nipple ring out and showing it to everyone like a nice little war trophy. But I think those are the two scenarios that's right. You're right. I think Alabama and Auburn is a very losable game for Alabama. I think, it's at home in Auburn. And last time it was in the Iron Bowl was in Auburn. Auburn was one play away, which was
Yeah.
a crazy pass
Yeah.
with as time expiring from winning that thing. I think Auburn's not going to roll over this year. They're going to give Alabama a fight for their life, and I think it's going to be very entertaining game. Um, the next game I'd just say, is worth looking into. Um, is honestly, I hate these two teams, but Arizona State, both 8-3, state rivalry. I think that's gonna be very entertaining. I just don't think Georgia Tech has the firepower to beat Georgia. I just really don't. I think we're going to see another overtime game, and I think we're going to see that really masculine looking whatever his name is. He looks really tough. Don't want to see him in an alley looking Georgia Tech coach crying on Kirby's shoulder again. So, you
Yeah.
know, Haynes King, Texas high school football legend. I just don't think he beats the Bulldogs though. But with all that being said though, if A&M loses, when A&M loses to us, they go from having a bye to hosting a CFP game. I'm just gonna throw this out here as a little fun fact. I think A&M then breaks the streak of home CFP game winners. I think this year you're gonna see a lot of those home teams still winning. I think A&M, even if when we beat them and they have to host a game instead of getting a bye, I think they lose in the first round, and we're really gonna laugh at them at that point. But that's about it, man. On rivalry week, I know we're focused on basically one game, but I'm focused on two. But surprisingly, when I look at it, I know they talk about this is the best time of the year for games. Um, it's just so much going on that you really can't even focus on them. So it's still going to be entertaining. It's the best time of the year for football. The holiday season, Thanksgiving, we're going to start getting football we get football starting Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it's going to be a heck of a good time, a lot of good food. You're going to get that holiday memories along with some of these nail biting games. It's a real good family atmosphere. Maybe not at the game, but it's a good time to just have those family bonding moments. And you talk about you might talk about this rivalry weekend for a long time. This has all the makings of a lot of family traditions and family holiday memories loading.
Yeah, yeah, and it's been like people hate on the expanded playoff, but it's allowed a lot of these standalone rivalry games to take on even more meaning. They always matter, but a lot of these games that you just mentioned are rivalry games that have playoffs implications on the line. And I agree with you on LSU. I think LSU can win that game. I was listening to a podcast earlier, and they just scoffed at the idea of LSU winning. OU's been getting by crazy turnover margin, and like that takes some skill, but a lot of that's luck. Their defense has scored them points, turned over, in the most opportune times, playing against um, questionable offenses, at least last week against Missouri. LSU's offense is not very good either. Nussmeier will be out, I think. It's going to be Van Buren, but Van Buren can sling it a little bit. And LSU does have a little, kind of have a good defense. And Mateer, as we know, is chopped liver right now. So I think that could be one for us. That's one I really want. If I had to choose one, and then I think just that alone, yeah, like you said, plus maybe Auburn doing it because I think Auburn will have a good chance at home. I think those two, but we need to watch out for is championship weekend. Let's say it's Texas Tech versus BYU. We need Texas Tech. We need all the favorites to win. And same with the ACC. We can't have the Big 12 or the ACC get two teams in. They got to both be one bid leagues, which I think is going to happen. I expect Texas Tech to win out, and I expect whoever wins the ACC to be the lone team there. But Miami losing this week would be nice because it gets them out of the at-large combo at all. They're playing at Pitt, and they're not even in consent and really in contention. I don't think for the ACC championship game. So let's get them out. Let's get Miami out. Let's have a classic Cristobal choke and just make more room for Texas after we hopefully beat A&M. But yeah, man, I'm so excited. This is what it's all about, man. And I'm Friday's slate is beautiful. You know, it's got back to back to back SEC rivalry games with Texas is the the nightcap, and it's gonna be a lot of good football, man. I'm hoping that chaos ensues and Arch Manning, sets another record on Saturday or Friday night, and Texas makes punches their ticket somehow against all odds with this crazy season that this very flawed team of ours finds their way into the playoff. That'd be pretty awesome.
Don't be surprised. And this is just my little hope and dream because I just love chaos. I'm an agent of chaos. I'm the progressive guy from, you know, that you buy the insurance for. I would love to see a Mario Cristobal choke, but I would love to somehow see SMU because I know they're saying SMU is still potential to make the ACC title game. Wouldn't it be just crazy if SMU somehow magically wins the ACC finally? Number one, it'd be really good for them as a program coming in only as the second year in the ACC winning the whole sucker, and that'd be funny. But number two, that would really open up, you know, the CFP for Texas as well, in case it comes down to one of the us being a 9-3 team, and there's all this other scheduling stuff. SMU winning the ACC title game would just be hilarious, and I think that really helps us out there too. Um, but yeah, man, mixing NFL and college ball, this is going to just be a fun time. But to really hammer down the LSU thing, I said it at the beginning of my thing. LSU's also playing, not only granted Nussmeier's out and we're gonna get Van Buren and stuff, but a lot of these guys too are gonna be competing for the eyes of Lane Kiffin. I've had it on good authority from Joel Klatt, who heard it from his very reliable source that right now LSU is the front runner for Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is probably going to be leaving Ole Miss for LSU, which also produces a very crazy question of whether he coaches Ole Miss in the CFP, if he's going to go to LSU and stuff like that after the Egg Bowl. But I think this LSU team has a lot more than just pride, but they're also, this is their interview game for their next head coach. And I think a lot of these teams as well, this is, some of these underdog teams who know their coach is getting fired or is already fired. I think don't leave them out this just yet on rivalry weekend because when you have that testosterone of hating another team as much as we do, like us in A&M and M and us in Oklahoma, adding that with the sense of I'm still going to be here potentially next year. I don't have maybe the transfer portal credentials and stuff like that, and I have to impress my next head coach. Don't be surprised if we're going to see a few more upsets because of that. I wouldn't be surprised if that's why Auburn plays, energized, LSU plays energized, and maybe a few others in there. It's just because they know their coach is gone, or they know they're going to be getting a new guy, and they need to start doing their interviews for showing their grit and becoming potentially that leader going forward for next season.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're trying to look good for the portal, if anything. You
Mhm.
start getting paid. No matter where you're playing at, there's opportunity out there. But all right, man. Well, I feel like we're beating a dead horse at this point. We just got to get to Thursday and start watching some football. I don't think there's any games on Thursday this year, any college games, which is kind of sad. But it's loaded. We got NFL on Thursday. But yeah, man, I'm excited, man. Are you going to the game Saturday?
I will be at the game. I will be there with College Game Day, Big Noon Kickoff, Joel Cladd, Bussing with the Boys, Tom Brady. We're all going to be there. We're going to have a lot of fun, man. And it's also going to be snowing. And who doesn't love a good snowing game in Ann Arbor for the game? So it's going to be a lot of good time, man. I know you'll probably be watching us just cremate those Aggies, but I'm going to be watching the whole world watching number one go down. So it'll be fun.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And if we lose to A&M somehow, I'll be all in on y'all because we're already out of the playoff. So if we lose, I'll be cheering for Michigan. That's just know that because I hate Ohio State too. But All right, y'all. Thank y'all for watching, man. It's been fun. Texas has made the season very interesting, and it's fun to hop on here and just talk about this crazy team that we have. But Arch Manning's hot, and Texas is going to get a big win against Little Bro on Friday. Book it, written in the stars. But yeah, thank y'all for watching. Give us some love in the comments, and like and subscribe and all that good stuff. But we'll talk to y'all soon, and hook 'em. Let's go get this win against Little Bro.
Hook 'em and go blue.